Fresno, California, number 18, Hot Sauce Giovanni Scelzi.
All right, what's up, race fans? Welcome to episode 2 of Scelzi Says. Here with Always Race Day. I'm Chris Williams, your host. And Gio, we're not in the same room today as we've had really bad internet problems at my studio. So I apologize to anybody watching on YouTube, but this works because this is our first episode with a guest. This is not a guest I could have pulled. How are you doing, my friend? And I will let you introduce the GOAT, the greatest of all time, onto the show.
I'm doing great. I have a hard on looking at all Donny's trophies. I'm just going to look at that for a while. Thank you for coming on, Donny. I appreciate it. What do you do,
Gio?
As you can see, the podcast is really serious. We have to talk about serious topics. But having these 2 weeks off, Donny, what are you doing? Are you home? Where are you?
Oh, I've been home. This morning, I was planning to be at my office, but I got a rental property just down the street from me here, and been trying to get a bathroom redone in the basement. So I've kind of been the guy to meet with the contractors, and it's been getting a little bit of that done. But we actually got a blizzard yesterday. We had our first dose of winter, and it was -6 or 7 last night. So we got a good dose, and it's still pretty cold outside, but I got all the snow moved this morning and ready to get back racing. It's that time of the year. I mean, it's damn near March here tomorrow or the next day, and ready to get chomping at the bit, but really haven't had much winter here in North Dakota. So it's been really kind of calm and relaxing and just kind of going with the flow.
Was it like 70 up there like it was here? It's been really jacked up.
2 days ago, it was 63. And then yesterday we had a blizzard, and when you get 63 in North Dakota, the end of February, you go, this is crazy. You're outside waiting for the grass to mow. I was cleaning up my yard, picking up dog poop, and somebody said, "Yeah, they're going to get a blizzard tomorrow." I'm like, no way in hell. And sure enough, we got a blizzard, and it was cold. So it's kind of a shock. You can go from 63 to -6. It's a pretty big culture shock for anybody, let alone someone who lives here.
Yeah, no, it's been freaking crazy. We've been doing the same. Like I have a 4-year-old, and she can't comprehend that it's not like time to get the bikes out and do all that good stuff. Donnie, I'm gonna let Gio get into the nuts and bolts with you, but I'm a guy I'm a sports writer. I do college football, college basketball, that type of stuff. I always wanted to be in racing, but I don't know. It didn't work out for me. But I was doing racing columns for the Des Moines Register like 10 years ago. And I called you to do a preview for the Knoxville Nationals. I'm not kidding. I'm all grown up now. I was so fucking nervous to call you. It was like calling Earnhardt for me, dude. Like I was like, oh my God.
Am I that intimidating, or is it just your perception of me? I mean, I think that's really what it is. I think people put you on a pedestal sometimes, even though you're not. It's just like I said, it's perception. But yeah, that's you're probably better off being in the media world than the racing world. It's Gio will probably agree with me on that. Some days it's probably a little bit less BS.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That's funny you say that, Chris. But so Donnie, there's a lot. I did a bit of a deep dive on your career, and it's insane. I felt like I knew a lot about you, but watching that documentary they did about you and your family on YouTube, and just looking at the information that's on your website, it's pretty mind blowing to me. I guess the position I'm in, only being my second year on the Outlaw Tour, you spent 10 years on the Outlaw Tour before you won a championship. So I feel like now, or for me at least, you run a few races, you run some outlaw shows, you run some all-star shows, you get your feet wet, might win a few races, and then you go on the Outlaw Tour. Your first couple of years on the Outlaw Tour, was your dad like, hey, you're going to sink or swim and figure it out? Or, was it a grind the first couple of years just getting your ass hammered?
Well, we didn't really know what we were getting into when we set out to do it, and my father, he didn't know either. So he was focused on trying to maintain the things at the business to make sure we had the equipment, and we never went without. There was times when it was, you know, honestly, we didn't know whether we were coming or going. So I think there's a lot as to why. That's probably the biggest reason as to why it took me 10 years. And, after a certain period of time, 5 or 6 years, I mean, things were a little different back then. Obviously, when you were racing against Steve and Sammy, and it just had a whole different, I mean, every night was intimidation central. And, my father knew there was going to be a time period. It was going to have to, you're going to have to settle in and learn. And really, he tried to preach the mental side to me, and I would never listen. I thought, no, it's all about, you got to have the right car, you got to have the right motor, and all these things got to line up. But realistically, he was right. So I was a slow learner. There's no question about it. Would I have been a driver who drove for a car owner? I probably would have been fired before I made it through the first year, and been ride jumping if I could get another ride. So driving my family's car really allowed me that time to kind of get my shit together, really, and figure it out. And after being out there a while, he started to tell me, hey, maybe you got to. It was in a nice way, really. Maybe you ought to, start looking at some business ventures here. And I was like, what? You don't think I'm going to make it in racing? And he's like, well, no, what if you get hurt? And he was starting to think that I wasn't going to make it in racing. And, but he was also pitched it to me as, maybe you could get hurt. And he's 100% right on that. You never know what's going to happen. But, that was kind of an eye opener. And him and I got into business together. We opened a car wash here in Fargo in 2004. And, that was an eye opener too. My first 10 years, Gio, I spent a lot of time on the road. I wanted to be out there with the guys. I enjoyed working on the cars. I enjoyed doing all those things, but I guess I come to a point where it's like, you know what, this isn't really healthy for a guy's frame of mind. If you want to be at this level, especially if you live in North Dakota, if you're someone like Steve or Sammy and those guys, they could be home quite a bit. Well, when you're from North Dakota, you couldn't. So, like I said, I was just a slow learner, and things come, when it finally started to come together, it came together in a, pretty big hurry. So, I'm pretty grateful for that opportunity, and, obviously have something to talk about today, but, there's really no right or wrong. That's why, like, I look at you, and, I was very fortunate to have my family there the entire time. I had my dad there criticizing me and a lot of these things, and that's great. But you've kind of done it the hard way. You know what I mean? You're doing it. You're a young guy, went out there and attacking it. And I got to give you a lot of credit for, man, you've always maintained the utmost composure and not done things stupid and silly. So you've learned from, very few mistakes you've made. And, I got to commend you on your process, because it's not easy to do. There's a lot of beat down. I don't have to tell you that. There's a lot of days you probably go, man, is this really for me? But every time you put the helmet on, I'm sure you feel the same way I do. You get complete satisfaction and gratitude out of it, and enjoy every second of it at that point.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think that something I've figured out kind of quick is when you're trying to learn how to race and you crash 3 laps into a feature and you're sitting there watching the race happen, you're not learning anything. Even if you're running 15th, 18th, 20th, some of your shittiest nights, I feel like you learn the most. There's times where I feel like I've won some races and everything went easy. You drew 1 or 2 in the dash and just had a really seamless night. And then you run 8th or 10th. It's like, man, I raced with all the really good guys and learned almost more being around those guys mid-pack than you did winning the race.
Absolutely. I've said it 100 times. Championships aren't going to be won the nights that you win. They're going to be won on the nights you don't win. In today's environment, it's not as simple anymore as drawing a 1 or a 2 pill. You got to be on your game all the time. And, you have to be able to pass cars. And that's where, we've lacked the last, 3 to 5 years. We just haven't had that consistency where we can race and pass cars when we start in the second and third row of the heat races and make up any spots. You just always have to be in that position. So, you learn, you're always going to be learning. The learning button never shuts off. And maybe that's why, I'm in the position I'm in today, because I'm just not learning as much as what we used to, but we've got to figure out how to learn from today's times and the way things have changed with all the tires and all the stuff. So, I guess the older you get, the harder it is to learn. Maybe it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but sometimes you feel like maybe that, that experience should come into play. But man, it sure doesn't seem to be a thing like it used to. So it's really about the learning curve.
Well, I'll tell you what's so amazing. Like, again, I've looked at, on your website and a lot of the stats that I thought I knew that I really didn't. There's an era in your career that really interested me. You won your first championship in 2006. You won in 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009. You won 4 in a row. You won 4 Knoxville Nationals in a row. 2006, 2007, you drove your dad's car. 08, 09, you drove Tony Stewart Racing. Normally, when you go through a transition, changing teams, there's a growing period. There obviously wasn't. And tied in with this, 06 was the first year of the NST, which is, the same thing that's going on now with the kind of split. And it's amazing to me that you really didn't miss a beat. Like, what was the transition like from 07 to 08?
Well, man, it was quite. I remember it distinctly. Rick Warner was racing in Charlotte, working for Everham as a car chief on a Busch Series team back then, and he showed some desire to come back and race sprint cars. He'd raced with Tyler Walker, and I don't know that they'd really ever committed to running anything full time, but Rick came to work for my father and our family team back in at the end of 05. And man, then the split happened in 06. And, that was not really, my father said, listen, you just worry about driving and I will, I'm going to take care of the rest of this stuff. We're going to race with the Outlaws. And he'd made that decision after having a few discussions and arguments with Fred Brownfield when some of that stuff had happened. So it was kind of really out of my hands. And obviously it was the right decision looking back today. But, there was a lot of questions in 06 with what that happened. And it opened a door and an opportunity for a lot of teams across the country. There was, I think they called them the Mean 15 at the time. But there was a lot of guys that wanted to go race with the Outlaws, but it kind of felt like there wasn't room for them, or there wasn't a spot for them. And it really opened. It was a great opportunity for a lot of people. And I guess it just kind of fell right in line. It was like we were ready. We were there. And in 06 kind of pounced on that opportunity. And then when everything kind of went back together, the other series had went away. Man, we didn't miss a beat from 06 to 07. And, it was kind of funny. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Anyway, at the end of one of them years, it was 06 or 07, Rick decided to leave. I don't remember what, he went to work for Casey Kane Racing and was going to go race with Joey and those guys. And so that was kind of a kick in the shorts to us when we put a championship season together and won these big races. And, one of the key ingredients leaves.
I mean, was there discussion of why, or he just, hey, I'm gonna go do something else. I'm gonna go a different direction?
Well, I think there was a lot of probably money flying around, or I'm not even sure. I honestly can't remember what the situation was, but and maybe not a lot of people want to live in North Dakota. Maybe it had something to do with no one wanting to be here, because it's tough to, you're never here, and if you're away from your family, it might have been a better opportunity. Anyway, Rick did leave and went to work for Casey. And that about 3 months into the season, I think we were March, May, April, somewhere in there. They were in Indianapolis staying in between races. And I guess Rick got let go. Casey let Rick go right there. So Rick called Jimmy Carr at TSR, and Rick stayed there until they could get him a ride or a ticket back to Charlotte, where his wife and children were. And so he spent a couple days in Indy, and that's really where the formation of myself and Tony Stewart Racing came from. Tony had wanted to start a second team. even when Lasowski was there, and there was talk about it. And Danny had talked to me about it, and my father was involved in all this, and it just it wasn't the right time. There wasn't an exit plan that was very good, so it never happened. But then Tony got with Rick and Jimmy, and they decided to do this second team, and they said, well, who's going to drive it? And Rick said, well, maybe you ought to call Don. And they were like, well, he's not going to come here. And so I remember we were at Gull Lake and Brainerd on a little bit of a family vacation and for the week, and they called and asked if we could have a sit down. And I said, well, when would you like to do that? And they're like, well, this afternoon. So my father and I, we hopped in the plane and flew to Indy, and we sat around, the Home Depot pool table upstairs at the shop. And that was the formation of the 15 team at Tony Stewart Racing. So, basically what it was, we were going to operate under TSR's banner the rest of that year, operate out of the shop, work with those guys, work with the other car, while Rick and those guys, started to assemble another team. So the guys that I had on my team at the end of the year went there, minus one guy that I guess they couldn't get something squared away with. So it was really an easy transition. It wasn't like I was really just starting over. We worked together through that whole 07 season and won a championship still while we were doing all that. So basically all that happened was the trailer had different signage and everything had different signage when we started the 08 season. And, everybody was so pumped and motivated that at that time, there's times when you get to that and you can't knock someone off the top. And we were in that position at that point and having a great time every night. We were, just gelling as much as you could. And so it was pretty neat. And I think everybody was pretty humbled. Obviously Rick and I had raced together and that changed. And then he went somewhere else and that changed. And I think it kind of put everybody in a little bit different mind frame going forward. So
Donnie, go ahead, Gio. I was going to ask, he brought up the NST thing and then everything that's going on now. Are there similarities with High Limit, or is this like a totally different animal? Did you learn something then that made you stick with the Outlaws this time around? How would you describe that?
Well, when it happened before, like I said, I remember when my father got in a heated discussion with Fred Brownfield. We were racing in Denver, and I remembered it wasn't fun to watch, but obviously they didn't see eye to eye on the future, and that's what it was really about. And I don't want to get into names, and it doesn't do any good to sit and nitpick little things like that don't amount to a hill of beans today. But Fred's vision of what was needed to go down the road to make it happen and my father's were two different avenues, and you got to respect both of them for it. That is there right and wrong. Even to this day, I can't say either one of them was right or wrong. Just because we come out on the right end of it doesn't mean it was right. But that wasn't really my decision. He told me to mind my own business, and I can tell you one thing about my father: if he told you to mind your own business and you didn't, I can tell you got a boot in the ass. And I remember it. Oh, well, still wish I could get it, but unfortunately that's not going to happen at 46 anymore. But, I don't know how you look at that compared to today. There's a couple things that, it really wasn't my decision, but realistically back then we hadn't even give these guys at the Outlaws a legit chance to even screw anything up or provide something great. There was some hubbub about starters, all these things that I think rubbed people the wrong way. And looking back now, I say, I think I see what they were trying to do or kind of had a vision for. Was it going to work? No, but you can't really always, cock block somebody's vision just because it's different than yours. So I can see why it didn't go forward. Obviously there was a lot of money that was changing hands. Obviously, in today's environment, there's still a lot of money changing hands. But I can tell you that, in my experience, um, people do things different when you're spending your own money versus spending someone else's. And I think that's something super huge. It's like our government. Our government has no damn clue what they're doing with money. I mean, we send 100 billion here and 100 billion there, and then they say, no, we can't spend 5 billion on something for us. It's not their money to spend. And when that happens in racing, it does happen. I mean, I drive for Tony Stewart. So does that mean I'm spending his money? Well, I really don't run the race team. I'm a driver, but I've had my own team and I've spent my own money. So I think people who spend their own money just go at things a little bit different. They're a little more frugal and they're a little more hands-on and they're a little more refined on what goes where versus someone that just, there's this endless pot of gold over here and we think that we can't lose. So, it's a tough scenario to be in.
No doubt. I think what is gonna interest me the most about High Limit is up to this point they've had their 12 race series last year. Every night was a home run. It was Tuesday nights. You had Kyle Larson at all of them. You're not competing against anything. This year I feel like it's gonna really test them because you look at Tampa East Bay looked like it was awesome, a whole shitload of cars. You go to Golden Isles, there's only 25, 26 cars. I wasn't there, so I can't speculate, but it looked like the stands weren't packed. I feel like the bad nights or the slow nights they had that aren't home runs, they're going to see if they can, survive throughout the whole year. Because the Outlaws, I mean, talking to Carlton, obviously not being around way back then, he's told me that not every night was a winner. Not every night was a home run, which what it seems like the Outlaws are now. Every time you go to a World of Outlaws race, stands are packed. People love it. The streaming deal has obviously changed the whole dynamic of racing in general. I feel like with Dirt Vision and the stuff that's added so much purses, but I feel like the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a change in the dynamic. Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Donnie, I don't know exactly how the NST stuff ended, but Fred Brownfield got killed at the end of that season. So who knows? They could have said, oh my God, it would have defeated the Outlaws, it would have done whatever, but in the end, it never happened. I mean, I think like you said, the whole dynamic is similar, but has a lot of differences because of how it looks in today's world.
Well, and that, look, I don't know how all the ins and outs of the NST happened, Gio, but I can tell you that obviously it died when Fred died, and there was other partners in there, but those partners didn't want to step up to the plate and put their own money in there. And that's what I'm saying is when you look at High Limits, is it any different? You have to ask yourself, so what's different about High Limits? Did they come with some dramatic rule package that was a problem from the Outlaws? Did they come up with some dramatic schedule change from the Outlaws? Actually, my guys put it on a spreadsheet, and this was a big decision in TSR going that way because Tony has a vested interest with obviously selling the All-Stars, which, man, what a kick in the nuts to Ohio and Pennsylvania racing on a regional level, not having the All-Star schedule function. And I don't think you're going to see the downfall of that this year, but you will going forward with Ohio and PA car counts going forward. But it's not different. There's no rules different. The format's not a whole lot different. It's somewhat similar. So really it's all it is guys doing the same thing on the other side of the street. It's a different ownership. It's, Brad's trying to do something for Brad that's obviously away from racing. And he can leverage Kyle's name and another streaming service, Flow, to be able to fund all this. And that's when you look at the schedule, my guys were going to spend 45 days more in a hotel and be away from the shop to do more traveling for 20 less races. And that's kind of how we look at things. I mean, every day them guys are away from the shop. I got 3 guys and 2 hotel rooms. And I don't have to tell you, hotels anymore are like highway robbery. If I sold gas for $8 a gallon because I could, they'd lock me up. But you can charge $300 for a hotel room because, we got a double B basketball tournament in town this weekend. We can charge $350, $400 a night, or there's an outlaw race. No rhyme or reason. It's ridiculous. I mean, you just want to rent the room for the night, not buy it for the month. But there's a lot of things that really are the same, and it's just on the other side of the street. So, I was involved, spent a lot of time talking with Brad about this when it started. And, a couple key takeaways I take from it was, Brad always said he never wanted to do anything to hurt the Outlaws or take away from the Outlaws. And that's not really proven true right now. I mean, we went from having a midweek series, which was pretty cool, kind of leveraged some bigger paying races. But I don't think I have to tell you that it's not about what the races pay to win. I mean, everybody wants to win, but only one guy can and run second. It's third on back are the ones that got to figure out how to make this financially feasible. And obviously there's more of those guys in that scenario than the guys that can win. So, a lot of the people that were with the Outlaws have left. I guess some of them I think have had, they're a little bit too much like fangirlies, where if you're in a professional racing series, you can't just be a fangirl or fanboy, whatever you want to call yourself with this stuff. You have to, you have to do everything at the utmost level. And that's one thing I will say, that it's kind of lost its way since Ted Johnson. I remember Ted used to get on his people. He wouldn't let them stay at the same hotel, and he wouldn't, he kept them away because he wanted to keep that professionalism and never have to answer those questions. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. From a business standpoint of it, I think right now, and I hope this never proves true, but right now I think it's probably one of the worst times in history of sprint car racing or dirt track racing that we can start getting super greedy on the financial side of it. And I'll tell you why. I can sit here and tell you today that our business is down 30+%, and we're having to do things different because you feel like you're riding the wave. It's worse than what COVID was. And obviously, I deal with a lot of transportation companies, and it has to do with our government and our politics and the way things are going and inflation and all these things. So and we're in election year and everything gets skewed and totally taken out of context during election years. So in my opinion, if things don't go right come this presidential election this year, racing's going to take a huge hit to marketing partners and money spent, because everybody's going to have to start cutting back.
I mean, look at
I deal with, we got a trucking company with us that we've done stuff with for a long time. And we deal with a lot of trucking, and they're telling me, you know what? They said, we are tired of leveraging millions upon millions of dollars to haul freight, to not have anything stick to us at the end. It's not worth it. So if things don't go the right way politically at the end of 2024, they're like, we're closing the doors. And I can feel it. You see it, you feel it. And it's not just trucking, it's everything. So I feel like that a guy's got to be very careful in what you do, running around like we got all this money, we throw this money around, because it's not gonna stay that way. Racing is not something that we all have to do, or it's a way of life because we want it to be. We chose it to be. If some of our partners start cutting back on money and the sponsorships, which it's going to be the first thing to happen if people got to start cutting back. Now we're in this. Really, did we cross a line? Did we get too greedy? And but that's just an opinion. I guess not everybody's going to look at it. I get the whole race car drivers sometimes only look at things from what they want to see in their perspective, because I've been there, I've done that. But as you get older and you start to feel everything that happens, not only in your body but in your checking account and your way of life and your tax statement at the end of the year and all these things, you just start to analyze things different and break them down. Because if you don't break things down and try to figure out how to have everything financially sound, then you're probably not going to be around very long.
I want to give you from a fan and a marketing perspective. I'm a late model guy, Donnie. Grew up in motorhomes, traveling around the country, chasing Billy Moyer. Okay, that's my background. The one thing I always admired about sprint cars is when I went to an outlaw race, I knew who was going to be there. The best cars in the world, best drivers in the world were all competing against one another. When I go to a late model race, Moyer's cherry picking. We don't really know who the hell is going to be there. And that's why you sprint car guys always make fun of us for caring about car counts so much, right? My fear here is, and I've gotten way more into sprint cars over the last 10 years due to streaming. I just don't want you guys to become what late models are in my mind, where I want to see the best cars, best drivers go up against one another. And I would also tell you this, and I've thrown some money at regional late model guys and around here about just sponsoring my businesses. When like the way I kind of look at this is you gave really good insight on the travel versus the amount of races run. From a sponsorship standpoint, I think that we're increasing the value because of the streaming, but a lot of these sponsors are not national sponsors. I know you have some. Geo, all of yours are here in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
They want to see you on the track.
For sure.
Like when you streaming to an audience in Pennsylvania, that while it's great, it's this exposure that doesn't do a ton for the local sponsor. So I just think there's more of it, like from that fan standpoint. I only have so many nights a year I can go to a race. I only have so many. I can't watch both every night. I wish I could, because I'm trying to watch Lucas Oil. I'm trying to watch the late model World of Outlaws, right? Like I just think you're spreading out the fan as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We're not only just spreading out the fan, we're spreading out. You take a look at, and I've always respected late model guys, by the way, and I'll tell you why. They get the full circle of it. They understand all these late model guys. They're just a little more down to earth when it comes to the financial side of it. They drive their own trucks. They stay in the rigs. They understand you're not going to pull into a little prairie track with 1,500 seats and have a 25,000 to win show. They get that. Where sometimes on the sprint car side of things, you guys get really pushy, like just push. They don't, it doesn't make sense. But because of the streaming, the same thing that's making it grow is the same thing that's hurting it. If we get to a point where we can't put people in the stands at the races, what do you got to put on? The promoters losing money. It's a double-edged sword. It really is. And I'd hate to have to navigate it, but I certainly don't agree with the fact that to sit here and say, oh, well, this company's worth $100 million. Well, they didn't get to be worth $100 million throwing money down the drain, doing things here. And the one thing that has never, ever worked in any form of business or motorsports is you don't rob from Peter to pay Paul. So if you're taking money from here and shoving it here to make it look good, that's going to happen for a short period of time, but it's not going to happen for a long period of time. But if we start eliminating, it don't matter what track it was. If the promoter doesn't make a little money, he's not putting on the race, then you got nothing to stream. And that track, its weekly program's gone. I mean, most of these racetracks across the country have disappeared. And anyone that tries to run a weekly show has to rely on their bigger races to make some money to make ends meet for all them other shows. And it's kind of at a weird spot. I know our races up here in North Dakota, they're SLS promoted races, which means them guys are from out of state. They come in and rent them the facility. And so nothing really sticks to the racetrack in an ample amount, but then guys come and say, well, you got to fix the fence, or you got to do this. You got to spend 50 grand worth of work. That's got to come from somewhere. The guy has to be able to make it back at some point. You can't just keep shoveling money into things without getting some sort of return. So, and I'm not, don't get me wrong. I love the SLS guys. They've done so much for us over the years and had so many races, but if they go away, now what? Now we're really in trouble. Or if the local track goes away, so it's got to work for everyone. And if we don't have these tracks, like I said, we got nothing to stream. And I'll probably get crucified for this, but I honestly believe the streaming service is way too cheap. You can sit in, I mean, I subscribe to it for, what is it, $199 a year or something, and can watch every race. That's cheaper than what it would be to go to one race. So at some point it has to have some sort of a correlation to keeping things going. But I get it. It's that's not my problem.
Especially if you buy beer.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a lot cheaper for me. Hell, one night down at Knoxville and Dingus is my Dirt Vision subscription. So hell yeah.
Exactly.
And plus, like, us fans, like, we are, I got $20,000 in diecast behind me, right? We're nuts. Like, well, charge me $5 more. I don't care. I'd do it just to support the drivers that I love. Gio, what do you think about all that?
I mean, I think that me, especially, I've been away from California for, I don't even know now, 5 or 6 years, and I've lost some connection with a lot of the local tracks. When you race the World of Outlaws full time, or as long as you have, Donnie, you do lose a little bit of perspective, because when we go to races, they're paying $10, $20, $50,000 to win. The stands are packed, and then when we leave town, the next local show, there's 500 people in the stands. I think a perfect example of that is Knoxville. You go to a local Knoxville race. Yes, the stands hold 15,000 people, and there might be 2,500 people in the stands, which is a really good crowd, but it looks like there's 5 people in the stands. And I think race car and team wise, the divide, and this happens in any kind of motorsport, the divide between the elite outlaw teams, or whatever you want to call them, the full-time teams, and the local guys is only getting bigger. I feel like, especially over the last 5 years, we go to Pennsylvania and, Lance DeWeese, Danny Dietrich, Brent Marks, the teams are dwindling, the local caliber teams that can compete with the Outlaws, in my opinion. See, I don't know if that was different back, because the posse is obviously still there, because they have the biggest local schedule of anywhere in the country for 410 races. But, late 90s, you had, Greg Hodnett, Fred Bramer, Stevie Smith. It seemed like there were way more teams that would race around their area, that when the Outlaws rolled in, it would, they still compete with us now. I'm not saying they don't, but it seemed like it was a lot tougher, because the outlaw teams, like I said, it seems like whether it's money, engines, resources, the gap is just becoming bigger from those local teams to the full-time teams.
I think you got to look at it this way too. In Pennsylvania, in Ohio, now that there's no All-Stars, I had someone come up to me, I think it was in Volusia when we were there earlier, gibbering about upset that I didn't go high limit racing and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, where are you from? And he said, he's from Pennsylvania. And I said, well, guess what? You just lost 12 of your biggest paying races in the state of Pennsylvania. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, there's not a single All-Star show there anymore. All-Stars are done. So, and that's when the All-Stars came to town, that the weekly shows aren't going to pay that. Those guys, that was 12 big shows. So now you take away, that's just in PA alone, 12 races. Then if you add Ohio Speed Week and some of that, which some of them races have come back. So yeah, it's sometimes I wake up and think, can this really be happening? Are we going down this path? But it's happening. So you just have to deal with it and try to change with the times and stay on the right side of it. But I think you got the right frame of mind on it.
So, and I think that's interesting to see your viewpoint in that. The last area I want to talk about is 2014 to 2018. You pretty much completely annihilated everybody. There was 5 consecutive years of 20 or more wins on the Outlaw Tour every single year. So this is all going on. First question, when did Scuba come on?
Scuba's been at TSR since the day I went there. When I went there in 07 and 08, Scuba was there working on the 20 car, which became the 14 car down the road. So there was a lot of things that happened in a short amount of time there. Tony, we go to start this team, and then all of a sudden he's part of Stewart Haas. He, started with Gene Haas in the NASCAR deal. So a lot of stuff happened at just the same time. But yeah, Scoob's been there a long time, and him and I didn't always like each other. We grew up around the same neck of the woods, but I know how it was when those guys were on the 20 car and whatever. He wasn't a big fan of me because I got my finger on the button all the time and demanding, and wasn't really his apples. And then some things started to shuffle up after a few years, and they asked me, and I said, I think it's time we get Scuba on the 15. Rick's a great crew chief. Rick can eat, sleep, and drink racing, but you got to have someone that can take care of the ins and outs and all the things that go on. And Scuba was that guy. Those two complemented each other like ding and dong. You know what I mean? You just can't. Scuba made it happen, and Rick made the decision. And a lot of times people don't realize Rick couldn't make a decision, and Scuba made the decision for him because he was confident. So those two together were, unreal. It was like I could show up an hour late, still feel like I was going to win. And so, Scoops, he's really been the backbone of the entire team. And yeah, you're right. There was a lot of years of great success there, Gio, 14 to 18. I remember 15 distinctly. I think we won 31 races that year, which is pretty crazy to sit back and look at now. It'd be now we sit back and win 3 and think we're having an okay year. But
what's amazing to me about that whole time is people don't realize when you're winning those races and you're doing good, you're constantly working to get better. You're not just unloading with the same package every night saying, well, this package wins, we're going to win again. You're always changing shocks. You're changing your whole package. I'm sure it evolved over those years. And 2018, you win the championship. I know there were talks. Obviously, Ford was a sponsor. The transition, because obviously developing an engine is not an easy process that, you've lived it the last 5 years. I think what's amazing is you win all these races and it goes, hey guys, Ford's coming on board. We're going to run a Ford. Like, I know it wasn't that simple, but what were the talks within TSR of, hey, we're going to bring a completely different engine package, not only engine package, have Andy Durham building it that had never built an injected racing engine. You have a late model guy, and you have really a super team with you, Ricky, and Scuba, guys that could win with a freaking Honda Civic engine in. Like, what was the transition in conversations like from 19 to now, really?
Well, when it first came about, when Stewart Haas was going to Fords, I think that big speculation was it's going to happen for us. There's going to be Ford get involved and build a sprint car engine. So everybody had this negative Nelly attitude. Rick did, Scuba did, I did, Shaver really did, because Shaver had been down that path before. And anyway, I mean, he's the one that was most vocal about it, saying, I'm not doing that again. I'm too old. That, but when the time come and it was in front of us, I'm not going to lie. I'll tell you how I felt. The Outlaws don't want to see someone come in and dominate and dominate and dominate. They want to keep changing it. They feel like it's their job as a series to do that. And I was like, I told Tony, I said, I don't really think we have anything to lose, because they're just going to keep doing things until they get what they want. And that's what it's what NASCAR does. It's what everybody's going to do. They don't want someone stinking up the show, and we had enough of that. So I guess I felt like the timing was right. I was like, we're in a good spot. So we should be able to tackle this with no problem. Although we know there's going to be setbacks, you're going to have DNFs, you're going to have all these things. And then when we started getting into it, it was actually quite fun. I mean, from a guy sitting at a computer talking about, drawing this from scratch, and you can put the water temperature probe where you want and the oil pressure line, and just, you can refine something on paper before you, get to the drawing board and actually make it and get, and really it's an awesome thing. The setback for us really was, there was at the time, if anybody knows anything about bore spacings, Ford had an aluminum block with a 4-5 bore spacing. And someone somewhere, I don't know who, told the World of Outlaws, you can't allow that. You cannot allow that. It will be a game changer. Everyone will have to have Fords, because that 4-5 bore spacing is going to allow them to run them so hard they won't, and just go, 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 go. And so the World of Outlaws said you have to be OEM bore spacing, which is 4.380 for Ford, Chevy's 4.400, and Dodges were 4.500. And that's, I guess, looking back on it now, why the Dodges used to run so good back in the day. So that meant that Ford had to go and make a new block from scratch, which is about $1 million process, from paper to mold to getting it to casting done. And it had to be done overseas. And then you end up in COVID and all these things happening, and similar thing with the cylinder head. So there got to be a lot of, it was just waiting. It's literally like a waiting process, but yeah, it's been a definite challenge. There's been a lot of it that's been fun. We haven't had the results we want by any means, but when we get them and we're starting to get to where we can get things the way I feel like they should be now, and Zeb Wise has been running them, and he seems to like the progress that's happened. That, going forward into the future, you can look at it and say, man, we were part of that, and it wasn't easy. It was definitely it's humbling, even to this day. But it is what it is. So I think the timing of it was right. They weren't going to continue to see the domination of what we had, and so you just deal with it. And I think that That's just part of it. You can't knock them for it. That's if I was in their shoes, I'd probably be trying to do the same thing. But it's definitely an overwhelming process that I feel like we finally got our fingers around things, and hopefully we can get the performance that we need.
Donnie, I've always wanted to ask you this because I love how you guys are. There's so much passion for the sprint car aspect of this. I asked Bobby Pierce one time. I was like, "What do you want to do? You ever want to go to NASCAR?" He's like, "Hell no! I'm going to be racing dirt late models till I die." And I feel Gio's kind of puts off that vibe with me. You had to have had opportunities. We've seen you in NASCAR a little bit, messing around there. I've seen you in a late model a bunch. Was there ever a point in your career where you thought about doing something else and you had that opportunity and you actually had to sit down and think about it?
Yeah, I did. I had an opportunity to do what was called an ABC program back in the day, Arca Bush Cup. It was put in front of me. It was a great opportunity. I went as far as go down to Charlotte to try to, figure out what I was going to do. And at the end of the day, when we sat down, I kind of had a fit, said, you know what, this isn't me. Since I was 5 years old, I dreamt of racing sprint cars, and then I got to race sprint cars, and all I want to do is win an outlaw race. And then I win an outlaw race, and all I want to do is win a championship. And I win a championship, all I want to do is win another one. And all this happened prior to me ever winning anything. And so I think it was a good process to go through, but it was also a process where you felt like you were an expendable tool. You know what I mean? Like you know how many races you're going to run in the next 3 years. And when someone tells you, yeah, you got 12 races this year and 14 next year and 6, I'm like, shit, I can do that much in the month of July with the Outlaws. So, honestly, when it comes to racing, I had to just kind of look at myself and go, man, is this really what you want to do? Yeah, there was a lot of money there, but they say money can't buy happiness. I guess I've had a hell of a lot of happiness racing sprint cars, and I still think to this day it was the right decision. I do enjoy some other, I've always loved the Silver Crown cars because of the AJ Foyt days, and I think it's like it's an awesome car because it's like driving a bathtub full of water, and the car changes so much over the course of the race. And so I've enjoyed some things like that. The little 500 at Anderson, there's a lot of little sprint car races on pavement and stuff that I've always had this kind of like goal in the back of my mind to do, but I was not put on this planet to drive on pavement except for to and from work and home or the airports. So pavement just never really was my thing. And I don't know that I'm ever going to get into doing anything other than that, but yeah, I think I made the right decision. I love what I do, and I hope I can continue to do it, for a long time coming. I don't know that you'll see anybody race into their 60s, but hey, who knows? I mean, Steve did it very successfully. So he set the bar pretty high. So to try to get there is going to be pretty hard.
Gio, what about it? What fascinates me is because I know how hard it is to do what you guys do. Like you're not taking private jets very often from, I know you got a plane, Donnie, but like it's not a luxury.
I don't want to start picking on the guy with private planes.
it's not a luxurious way of life, I guess is the way I would put it. These are small towns. Even if you do get a hotel, you're not staying in these five-star hotels. What is it, Gio, for you? Like what's so addicting about that way of life? Because it's not your guys' job. You have to eat, sleep, and shit this stuff.
Well, I got told when I was young that racing isn't fun, winning is fun. And it's kind of a weird thing to hear when you're 12 years old and all you want to do is just drive a sprint car. But in the end, going around there and making laps isn't the fun part. It's knowing that you beat the best guys on a given night. And I think what's so unique about sprint car racing and dirt racing in general is, a NASCAR schedules 36 races. They'll park on Wednesday, have a whole weekend deal at the same place, practice, qualify, race, and then move to the next city. I mean, we can cover 500, 600, 700 miles in a couple nights. And I think that's what's so unique about it is people don't realize I bought a brand new truck last year. It's got 50,000 miles on it just from last year. So, the guys that, it's a good question. Why do we do it? I don't really know, other than wanting to win races. And it becomes a way of life. I mean, Donnie, you've spent 28 years out here. I mean, could you really imagine yourself doing anything different in that time period?
No. I've never even questioned, would I do something different? I think that over my experience, the things I've learned in racing has helped me, want to be home and excel in some of the business stuff we have and deal with, just dealing with people. And I have a great balance. I don't envy anybody that wants to beat up and down the road. You got to really want to race real bad to Chris, to do like what Gio's doing. He's driving his t-shirt trailer and picking up homeless dogs on exits, and taking them in.
I should have brought
he's honestly, it's and the unique part of it is I've lived it, and I've been miserable in some of them environments. I got to commend Gio. I never hear him complain. Never, he's always got a pretty upbeat about it. And there's nights, I know he's poked fun at me a little bit here and there when we go places it's 4 hours, and he'll be, how long was it for you? I was like 15 minutes. So, you try not to bring that up because it's not like you're trying to brag, but
hey, for most of these places,
so I got to answer.
We fly right over Des Moines going to North Dakota. So if you want to just talk out, you drop me off.
Anyway, but it is definitely, but it's also, if you've never done it, this is something that I've had in the back of my mind. When you're young, and you want to race, you get tunnel vision. I had it. Okay. I absolutely had tunnel vision. Nothing else in my life mattered. Honestly, I got married. I didn't even know I was married. All I give a shit about was racing. And obviously that's why I'm not married today. You let it consume you because you want it so bad. And I was that way. And you don't even acknowledge a problem like, hey, maybe my marriage is in trouble because I'm too much in love with racing, or, all these things. You don't even realize it until it's too late. So it's just tunnel vision, but it's, neat to see that Gio's tackling it quite well. I don't think I could script it for you any better. You do a pretty damn good job of it. So you got to keep down that track and keep on the right path, but don't let it consume you. You still gotta have, things in life that matter other than just getting in the race car and being successful in it. But man, I let it get the best of me, and I guess I can't take back anything I've done. I don't regret anything I've done, but I wish I, could do some things a little bit different so I didn't have so much muddy water from time to time. But that's live and learn. And I've definitely learned from it.
But look at the greats in motorsports. I mean, yourself, Steve Kinzer, to win those championships and to do what you guys have done. Brad Sweet, the last 5 years, I would be surprised if he said that hasn't taken a bit of a toll on his relationship with his wife and his daughter. You race, you're gone from February to November. Every single weekend there's hey, can you come to my baseball game or my football game or whatever? Hey, sorry, I can't. I'm racing. And even relationships. I mean, luckily my girlfriend grew up in racing. She understands it. But if you date a girl and she says, hey, can we go out to the movies on the weekend? Hey, I'm racing. What about next weekend? Hey, I'm racing. So pretty much from now until November, I'm racing every weekend. So I'm not going to do anything with you. And it's hard, but again, at what cost? It is a lifestyle, and it sounds cliche, but you could be having the worst day in the world. But when you walk into your semi and you're putting tear-offs on your helmet, and they call for engine heat, nothing else in the world matters.
Nothing else matters.
That whole night, you get home after a month of being gone, and like you said, we've been home for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and we're like itching, like to freaking let's go, get some more racing,
Yep, that's definitely the case.
That's why I love and admire you guys, because I wanted to be an announcer, Donnie. I never wanted to race a car because I don't have balls like you guys do. It was one summer when I was in college, I went back home and I was announcing 5 nights out of the week. I was at I-80 in Nebraska, Corning, Eagle, across the Midwest. And I was making like $75 a night. Half the time I was living in my Pontiac Sunfire. And I was like, I got to the middle of June and I was like, fuck this, I'm out. I finished the year because I respected my bosses, but I was like, I'm not like this isn't, this isn't for me. And but I got to, and I wasn't even doing a touring series. I'm going around to weekly tracks. Like I'm making no money doing that, and it's just, even those guys like my buddy Blake Anderson, who I know you guys both know. He's an Iowa guy. I love Blake. I mean,
So what's Washington guy now?
yeah, but I just see the work and the miles that those guys put on, and everybody from the techs to it's this crazy traveling circus that you all have to have a few screws loose to participate in. I admire. I think we need to do that, Gio, with this show though, as we keep growing, is tell those stories as well, because it's a huge part of what you do.
I mean, I didn't know half the shit you told me tonight, Donnie. Like, it's people from the outside looking in. You only see what fans see, and you don't see the discussions that go on behind the scenes, and whether it was a quick decision or a long decision, or how you see, you can't see label from inside the box. I think that's a great saying, and it's amazing to see over the almost 30 years that you've raced how much has gone on. And I didn't even know you had an opportunity to do that stuff on pavement and NASCAR, and I feel like you had a very similar aspect to the way I looked at it. It's just, what are you really doing this for? Do you love pavement NASCAR racing, or do you love sprint car racing? And I found myself watching Dirt Vision as I was waiting to go practice or qualify at an ARCA race. And it's not fair to the guys in that operation, because my heart wasn't in it, which it seems like it was the same way for you. And you got to be happy, because I don't feel like I've worked a day in my life being able to race sprint cars for a living.
Absolutely. I haven't, I don't feel like it either. I even got as far as I went and did one of the pavement schools that they wanted me to go, just to see how. And, I think I actually learned more from Mike Lozier at the Finish Line Racing School. It's kind of when I started to apply some of it to dirt. And that's when things started to, start going the right way for me. You learn a lot of things from doing that. I guess being diverse in today's environment is it's definitely important. I think we've seen the talents that are out there. I mean, you can't deny probably the talented person we're ever going to see in our lifetime is Kyle Larson, and whatever he drives, the guy can. I think he should race BMX bikes too. See if he can win in those. But it's definitely helped doing those different sorts of things. But I'm just very fortunate. I ended up right back where my heart was and what I dreamt of. And I always say this: careful what you wish for, because it may come true. And it definitely did for me.
All right. Well, the takeaway I have is, Gio, we got to go win some races so you can get yourself a plane.
Yeah. Well,
no pressure.
The guy had one.
No pressure.
You got to incorporate it with business. He's got that opportunity. Well, I don't know. He's
got the podcast now. We can.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if his dad is your dad retired now. Did he sell out?
I don't know what the hell he is. My phone was ringing, and it's probably him asking me why the hell I'm not answering my phone. So
yeah, probably. Well, if I know he's going to be calling me here shortly, because I owe him about $150,000 for a truck that got done there yesterday.
The truck should be on the way. I've got the.
Yeah, I got to call Dom back here later, but yeah. Anyway,
well, we'll let you go. We'll let you get to your meeting and actually do the important stuff.
Thanks, Donnie. Yep. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, guys. I had a great time. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
All right, now we'll do it in person next time. We'll bring some beer.
Oh, absolutely.
How about that?
Yep.
All right, that sounds good. He's the great Donny Schatz, greatest of all time. That was awesome, Gio. Thanks for setting that up, man. We got to do a lot more of interviews like that. That was fun.
Absolutely. I mean, I knew that's a side of things that no one sees that side from Donnie. Everyone sees the tunnel vision guy in his boots, his jeans, and his tucked in polo at the racetrack. Like, he doesn't talk to nobody because he is there to win races. Like, he's not there to profile and sell T-shirts. And I admire him a lot, as you can see, and I want to base myself off of what he's done.
One of the things I like about you, you're 23, 22. You can tell you grew up in a racing family, because you called me and you were really excited that we were going to be able to get Donnie on, and I could tell just the admiration and respect that you had for him. Like, I don't know if that's because you come from a racing family, but I would think that definitely plays into it too. Because I would guess not every 22-year-old in the garage has that much respect for the competitor, especially the older guys who paved the way. Feels like it to me.
Landon Crawley, who did a phenomenal job at Volusia. I know he didn't have the results he wanted to in the feature, but to be able to qualify good and stay up front in the dash. They interviewed me, Buddy Kofoid, which again is a phenomenal race car driver, and Landon Crawley. And Landon had run like 3 410 races before this year started. And he's like, yeah, I've been to a couple outlaw shows and stuff. And it makes me feel old because I feel like I'm still 16. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started. Yeah. I've been out here for 7 years, second year on the outlaw tour. And it's just like, not saying Donnie's old, but man, like at some point, like I know he has, because, you know, like he speaks very highly of me, which I appreciate, but to see the changing of the guard, because it was always Steve, Sammy, and Doug Wolfgang. You know, you had Dave, those badass guys in there. And, you know, it was, you know, Darren Pittman, Steve Kinzer, Donny Schatz for a while. Shane Stewart was up there. And now really it's, you know, Donnie, Brad Sweets, David Gravel, Carson Macedo, Logan Schuchart, like the guys that I felt like were those young classes when I was watching are the ones that are winning races now. So it happens in all kinds of motorsport, the changing of the guard and stuff. You know, you can't have Donny Schatz can't race till he's 60 years old. So it's got to change at some point. But it's just, it's amazing to see his viewpoint on things and, you know, the way he looks at stuff and how discussions go within TSR.
Just phenomenal. So real quick, you're back out on the road. We go back racing March 3rd and 4th, correct?
So we'll kick off bike week. I actually leave tomorrow for Florida. So we have kind of a bike week kickoff event in DeLand, which is about 30 miles west of Daytona Beach. Excuse me. Going to have the car there on display and stuff for all the bikers and stuff to hang out. So the weather looks like shit, which hopefully that clears up. And then we go to Texas for about the next month or so, Cannondale, Cotton Bowl, a couple new racetracks in Arkansas and Oklahoma. So I'm excited. This next month will be cool. Normally we're going Texas into California, but they've kind of gotten rid of the California swing there early in the year with the rain and stuff that's happened. So a few new tracks, and we make it back to Knoxville in April. We'll
be in touch. I begin my crazy travel part over the next 3 weeks or so with March Madness. So I don't know where I will be, but we'll probably check in and do a little show from 2 different hotel rooms or from your rig or wherever. So this was awesome, man. Best of luck down in Florida. We'll be watching as always. All right, brother.
Thank you.
All right. He's Giovanni Scelzi. I'm Chris Williams. Thanks to Donny Schatz for joining us here on Scelzi Says. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Just follow us on social media at Chris M. Williams. What's your social? You have a weird Scelzi. Give me your Twitter.
Twitter's Geo Scelzi.
Geo Scelzi.
Yeah, you can find me anything.
Okay.
Scelzi, you can find
KCP Racing. Yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on when the next show will be. Thanks to everybody for paying attention, following us on YouTube, and please, when you listen to the podcast, give us a rating, leave us a positive review. That helps us grow this thing, and we'll be back in a couple weeks.